Johnny Carson seemed completely relaxed sitting behind his Tonight Show desk every night. He was the king of late-night television, drawing more viewers than Monday Night Football at his peak. Audiences expected smooth charm, quick jokes, and interviews that felt like friendly conversations in someone's living room. Most nights, Carson delivered exactly that. But there were 8 celebrities who could make even this master of entertainment lose his cool. These difficult guests caused problems that went far beyond what viewers saw on television. Their visits led to backstage arguments, shouting matches, people walking off the set, and moments when Carson felt trapped on his own show. Here are the stories of those 8 personalities who pushed Carson to his limits. Frank Sinatra. The chairman's demands Frank Sinatra didn't just visit The Tonight Show. He took it over, traveled with bodyguards, personal tailors, and sometimes even detectives. NBC security wrote his arrivals in big block letters in their logs because his visits were major events. One famous incident happened in 1976 when Carson was telling a joke about peanut allergies during his opening monologue. Suddenly, Sinatra walked out onto the stage without warning, put his arm around Johnny, and soaked up a 40-second standing ovation from the audience. Carson asked, "Do you need the whole show, Frank?" Sinatra just winked and replied, "Only till the band packs up." Behind the scenes, Sinatra's team made unusual demands. They wanted the studio kept cooler than normal, a teleprompter to help him remember song lyrics, and space for 12 of his friends to stand on the side of the stage. Carson usually ran a very strict show, but he agreed to all of Sinatra's requests, even though they annoyed him. When a young producer mispronounced one of Sinatra's bodyguards' names, the guard reportedly removed the producer from the hallway. Carson later told his close friends, "It's Frank's world. He's just filming it." But Carson also worried about losing his audience's respect by seeming petty or weak. So he introduced Sinatra with great respect and carefully steered their conversations towards safe topics like old memories and past successes. Carson avoided asking about mob rumors, political fights, or marriage scandals. The ratings went up when Sinatra appeared, but the stress showed on Carson. His assistants noticed he poured himself an extra scotch on those evenings, muttering, "Chairman of the board, sure. But I still signed the network paychecks." Bob Hope. The scripted King Bob Hope was television royalty. NBC executives called him Sponsor Gold because advertisers loved him. But when Hope arrived in Burbank, he brought suitcases full of index cards with pre-written jokes. His staff would mail The Tonight Show producers a thick packet of materials days before his appearance. This packet included scripted jokes, suggested questions, product mentions, and even camera angles for cutaway shots. For Carson, whose magic came from spontaneous reactions and quick wit, this felt like getting sheet music at a jazz club. During Chate's tapings, Hope rarely looked at Johnny. Instead, he watched the cue cards held by the cameraman, waiting for Carson to set up the next punchline. Carson tried to improvise once, tossing out an unexpected follow-up question. Hope blinked, shuffled through his cards, then delivered his pre-written joke anyway, completely ignoring Carson's new direction. The audience laughed politely, but producers could see Carson's knuckles turn white as he gripped his pencil. Things got worse each time Hope used the show to promote another NBC special. Instead of telling interesting stories, he plugged air dates and sponsor tins. During one 1978 appearance, Hope mentioned Texaco 3 times in 7 minutes. Carson joked, "Texaco gets more airtime than I do," but the quip only showed his frustration. Crew members later remembered Carson muttering backstage, "I'm the warm-up act for a subsidy." Hope's star power forced the show to keep booking him despite flat segments. Ratings data proved older viewers stayed tuned when he appeared. Network memos show Carson lobbying for fewer Hope visits and suggesting fresher comedians instead. NBC briefly considered this, but reminded everyone that Hope's specials earned millions in advertising revenue. Carson gave up fighting, but created a new strategy. If Hope appeared, they would pair him with a high-energy second guest, or end with a musical finale to restore spontaneity. Even so, staff noticed the temperature in Carson's dressing room seemed to drop 10 degrees the moment Hope walked into the building. Joan Rivers, The betrayal. When Joan Rivers first sat across from Carson in 1965, she said, "It's so exciting too. Be here." My mother finally stopped crying. Carson liked her style. For the next 20 years, he brought her on 90 times and even made her his main guest host, something he'd never done for anyone else. Behind the scenes, Rivas sent him handwritten thank you notes and even birthday cakes, with boss spelled in frosting. But Rivas had bigger ambitions than guest hosting. By 1986, she'd filled in for Carson 190 nights and built her own late night. Following, Fox executives, eager to launch a rival network, offered her a staggering contract with full creative control, something NBC had never promised. Rivers accepted but hesitated about whether to call Johnny first. Her advisors warned that NBC might withdraw the offer if word leaked. She gambled, kept silent, and trusted a news embargo that broke anyway. Carson heard about the deal on the 6 p.m. NBC news feed. To him, mentorship demanded loyalty and a personal phone call before he learned about it in headlines. Rivers frantically dialed his direct line that evening. Technicians heard Carson say, "I don't want to talk to her," and hang up. The next morning, the Tonight Show booking sheet carried a handwritten note. Joan Rivers permanently blacklisted. Rivers' new show debuted to curiosity, but collapsed under network mistakes and affiliate dropouts. In interviews, she cried while recounting the phone call that never happened. Carson never softened his position. Even after Rivers' husband's suicide and her career freefall, Jay Leno honored the ban through his 22-year tenure as host. When Jimmy Fallon finally invited Rivers back in 2014, crew members felt like a ghost had been lifted. Veteran Tonight Show. Writers still ranked this rift as Carson's deepest wound. A mentor felt convinced that his student had sold him out for a bigger microphone. For months after, Carson's monologue avoided any mention of Rivers, and the loss of their friendship clearly affected him. Wayne Newton. The confrontation. For months, Carson's monologue poked fun at Wayne Newton. Carson once said Las Vegas is installing brighter stage lights. Wayne Newton's hair needed photosynthesis. Audiences roared, but Newton didn't find it funny. Vegas sources whispered that the singer, who had just invested millions buying the Aladdin Hotel, disliked any damage to his polished brand image. Newton flew to Burbank, unannounced on a taping day in 1980. Security cameras captured him striding down the hallway in a silk shirt, fists clenched. He barged into Carson's office where the host was reviewing cue cards. According to stage manager Fred de Cordova, Newton slammed the door, leaned over Carson's desk, and stated quietly, "You ever call me a joke again? I'll show you the punchline." Carson, unaccustomed to physical confrontation, nodded silently. Newton walked out. Crew members say Carson stayed motionless for a full minute before exhaling. Well, damn. That night, the script cut all Newton jokes. Carson never admitted fear on air, but insiders observed a shift. His monologue barbs turned towards safer targets like politicians, airlines, and the weather. Newton returned as a musical guest, only with contractual assurances. No jokes before or after his performance, and no mention of their prior tension. The once playful host now stepped carefully around the entertainer's high notes. It was proof that a single hallway showdown could silence late night's sharpest tongue. Fred Rogers. The pacing problem inviting Fred Rogers on the show seemed like a surefire heartwarmer. Pairing the gentlest man on daytime TV with late night's favorite host sounded perfect. Even the booking memo sounded cozy. A 5-minute chat, light demo of neighborhood puppets, ideal break from celebrity plug segments. But from the moment Rogers walked through the curtain, the tempo gap became obvious. He paused center stage, gave the crowd a small wave, and said, "Thank you very much, friends. I'm very glad to be here." The applause died down awkwardly because no one could tell if he'd finished his greeting. Carson led with a prepared line, "Fred, I wore my sneakers in your honor." Lifting a shiny loafer to reveal bright white sneakers he'd slipped on seconds earlier, Rogers smiled, folded his hands, and replied, "That's very thoughtful, Johnny. Sneakers can help us feel ready to play." The audience laughed politely, expecting a follow-up joke from Johnny. None came. Rogers thought his sentence was complete. Dead air swallowed the punchline, and the camera booth frantically widened the shot to capture both men while Carson regrouped. Johnny tried another angle, asking about crazy fan mail from kids. Rogers countered with a careful story about a 7-year-old who feared bathtub drains and how imagination can turn fear into curiosity. He spoke in patient, measured phrases, leaving 2-second rests between thoughts, perfect pacing for preschoolers. But eternity for 11:45 p.m. television. In the control room, Associate Director Bobby Quinn tapped a stopwatch. Every planned punchline slid 30 seconds further down the rundown. Card handlers started crossing off jokes because the timing no longer fit. Carson understood the unspoken rule. You don't roast Mr. Rogers, making him the target of a joke. Risked looking cruel, so Johnny stayed respectful, nodding through what eventually became a 5-minute reflection on the power of make-believe. Viewers at home saw warmth. Stagehands saw sweat forming under Carson's collar. When the band finally played the commercial break music, the host exhaled hard enough to fog the desk glass. The post-show analysis was brutal. Minute-by-minute Nielsen checks showed a 3-point ratings dip during Rogers' answers. The laughter count, compiled by production interns with hand clickers, logged 22 laughs. A novelty animal segment the night before had hit 60, but then came the mailbags. Hundreds of handwritten notes praised Rogers' grace. Many came from parents who rarely stayed up late but did that night because their kids begged to watch. We gained goodwill, producer Fred de Cordova admitted, just not momentum. Adjustments followed. Rogers' future invitations were scheduled for December broadcasts, when audiences tolerated sentimentality better. Writers removed 2 jokes from Carson's monologue to create extra cushion time. Talent coordinators asked Rogers to bring tangible props like a small trolley or puppet, so Johnny had something playful to interact with. Even then, directors kept a musical act on standby in case pacing lagged. Off camera, Carson remained courteous, shaking Rogers' hand and thanking him sincerely. Yet as they parted, he whispered to a stage manager, "Book him after a stand-up, not before. Daddy needs caffeine after that." Years later, when asked privately about the slowest guest he ever hosted, Carson said, "Fred Rogers, wonderful man. But trust me, it's the only interview where I kept checking the clock and my pulse at the same time." Charlton Heston, the lecturer Charlton Heston, approached interviews. Like Senate testimonies, Carson would ask, "Chuck, ever get hurt doing those chariot scenes?" Heston would lean back and begin recalling childhood horse ranching, Yale Drama School, and the philosophy of risk and art. 5 minutes later, he'd finally arrive at the cracked rib anecdote while the studio band twiddled their thumbs and Carson's head bobbed politely. At commercial breaks, Heston clarified points with off-air footnotes. He referenced Greek tragedy, quoted ancient historians, and urged Johnny to visit the NRA Museum. Carson preferred rapid questioning and punchline rallies. Heston delivered treatises. After a 1987 episode, producers counted 9 audience laugh bursts. Down from the usual 30, Carson's crew experimented by placing comic Don Rickles after Heston to revive energy. Rickles entered, saw the serious mood, and joked, "Who died?" Oh, it was the audience. The crowd erupted. Backstage, Carson thanked Rickles and whispered, "Always follow Moses with mayhem." Heston remained welcome on the show, but with strict time limits. 8 minutes, no political rants. 1 epic story maximum, Don Rickles. The insult hurricane. Don Rickles believed in comedic demolition. Insult so fast no one could build a defense. He greeted Carson's audience with lines like, "Look at you. 30 million people watching a hockey puck." Carson played the straight man until Rickles crossed from playful to disrespectful. In 1976, Rickles guest hosted and accidentally broke Carson's cherished wooden cigarette box. When Carson returned the next night, discovered the damage live on air, halted the broadcast, and marched to the adjacent set where Rickles was filming CPO Sharkey. Cameras followed as Carson confronted him. "You broke my box." Rickles cowered theatrically, and America howled. But off camera, Carson noted that Rickles ignored time cues, overshadowed other guests, and occasionally roasted topics NBC censors flagged. After a 1985 appearance where Rickles mocked an audience member's weight and complaints poured in, Carson imposed new guardrails. He pre-interviewed the comic, limited set destruction, and kept family jokes rated PG. Rickles complied, barely, because he cherished their friendship. But segments still left Carson sweating. Stagehands joked they needed Rickles maybe once, per sweeps period, never twice. The hidden craft of hosting 8 disruptors, 8 flavors of tension. Bob Hope's canned gags, Joan Rivers' betrayal, Wayne Newton's intimidation. Fred Rogers' earnest stillness, Charlton Heston's epic speeches, and Don Rickles' cyclone of insults all chipped at Carson's composure. Yet he rarely let viewers see the cracks. Watching those episodes now, you'll find tiny tells. A tightened grip on a pencil, a faster sip from the coffee mug, a slightly forced laugh that lasts a beat too long. That's the hidden craft of hosting, turning irritation into entertainment, betrayal into ratings, and dread into an even sharper punchline. The next time you watch a classic Tonight Show clip, pay attention to the spaces between laughs. You'll glimpse a master juggler keeping flaming torches aloft while smiling for 30 million people and silently praying the next torch won't be an angry entertainer or an insult comic with a hammer.